Hey, greetings, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's Mental Health in Franklin County Resources Lunch and Learn. This is the Franklin County Department of Job and Family Services Lunch and Learn series. My name is not Joy Bivens, our Deputy Director of Health and Human Services at Franklin County. Is under the weather today, so I will be pinch hitting for her. My name is Bart Logan. I'm the Deputy Director for Communications at Franklin County Job and Family Services. And I'm really excited to host and facilitate today's Lunch and Learn on behalf of our county commissioners, Erica Crawley, John O'Grady, and Kevin Boyce. So today is going to be the third and final session in our three-part Lunch and Learn series. It's focused on mental health and featuring our sister agency, the Office of Justice Policy and Programs, as well as its local providers. So our first and second Lunch and Learn series were held in February and March, respectively, and throughout our series, our discussions have centered around residents who've been struggling with mental health and the opiate addiction, opiate crisis, county resources available for residents, as well as in our last Lunch and Learn, we had a really authentic and candid, transparent discussion last month with President Erica Crawley from the Board of Commissioners, as well as OJPP Director Rochelle Pride and Deputy Administrator Bivens about their programs. If you missed either of those, or if you'd like to rewatch them, we have recordings available here on our Facebook page. Just scroll on down after you're finished tuning in for this, and please do check those out if you haven't had a chance to. Great conversations, great resources. But today we're going to be discussing mental health and how it relates to violent crimes and the impact of trauma on both victims, survivors, as well as their families. Before we begin, I'd like to share a little bit of background so you all know why this conversation is so critical for the mental health and well-being of every resident here in Franklin County. Afterwards, we're going to dive right into questions with our panelists. But first, let's take it back a little bit and think about the COVID-19 pandemic. It's had a significant impact on the mental health and well-being of our community members. In June of 2020, even in just the first year of this pandemic, because we're going on two now, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that substance abuse disorders, anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, suicidal thoughts, all of them were on the rise. From June of 2019 through June 2020, 3 times as many people were reporting anxiety disorders, 4 times reported depressive disorders, and 1 in 10 people started having increased substance abuse issues. In June of 2020, as compared to the entire year of 2018, 2 times as many people seriously considered suicide. That's twice as many people just in the month of June of 2020 as the entire year of 2018. So if this is your first time joining us for this 3-part series, maybe wondering what is Franklin County doing to address the increasing mental health crisis impacting our residents? Well, what studies have also shown is that as many as 75% of people feel more comfortable taking a self-paced approach when it comes to addressing their mental health issues. The stigma associated with mental illness likely plays a large role in this, but we also recognize that we're in the midst of a mental and behavioral health crisis, and we have been for some time, even prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, but it has certainly been exacerbated by it. So it is imperative for us to meet people where they are, and that's where the Credible Mind platform that we're going to be highlighting shortly comes in. So our Franklin County commissioners last year funded the Credible Minds online library, mental health library and technology platform to help connect residents and families with national as well as local resources to help address their emotional health challenges, and all at no cost. So the website, and we'll be sure to share this in the chat and throughout this conversation, is www.franklincountyohio.crediblemine.com, and allows county families to search for information and resources on over 200 emotional and mental health topics. So visitors are able to take a variety of self-assessments, which we're going to demo shortly, and be connected with apps, podcasts, videos, articles, books, you name it, all on the platform. They're all evidence-based approaches that are known to help with a variety of mental health and well-being topics. It also provides us with access to analytical data to track different trends in platform utilization while importantly protecting your personal information. We have no disaggregated data. This is only allows us from the county to be able to track what are the sort of issues and challenges that our residents are facing most common, so we can help provide resources and fill the gaps or connect them with those existing providers and partners that are already in that space. That's what this is about, being a bridge for people and their mental health treatment. So the Board of Commissioners is addressing mental health throughout Franklin County, franklincountyOhio.crediblemmind.com website. And it also supports our Franklin County Rise Together Blueprint. Goal number 9 of that is about reducing the overall incidence and racial disparities in the occurrence of preventable diseases and trauma. So joining us for today's discussion, our panelists are going to be Courtney Benner. She is the grant specialist at Franklin County Office of Justice Policy Programs. Courtney, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We've also got Melissa Pierson. She's the Chief Operating Officer at Justice Policy and Programs. And then we have Kevin Greenwood. He's the Deputy Director of Survivor Services for Office of Justice and Policy Programs and also heads CASA of Franklin County. So I want to thank all of you for participating in our conversation today so our residents can learn more about this important topic and some of the resources available in Franklin County. And we're going to go to you in just a moment. But first, we want to introduce our friend of yours, Andrew Christopher. He is the Chief Alignment Officer for Franklin County Health and Human Services agencies. And he's going to walk us through this new website in this online library to provide us with a little bit of an overview about this new online resource for residents. So thank you for joining us, Andrew, and please take it away with the walkthrough.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Bart said, I'm the Chief Alignment Officer for the Health and Human Service agencies here in Franklin County. We are really on a path over the next couple of years to really realign our service model, and the Credible Minds platform is going to be an integral part and kind of first step in realigning things from process-driven to human-centric approaches, so that we are not only just processing cases and conducting transactions, but actually getting to the heart of family and neighbor challenges. And so, as Bart mentioned, as I share my screen here, well, it was all ready to go. One moment, please. There we go. So as Bart mentioned, this is a completely free platform. franklincountyOhio.crediblemmind.com is where you can find this, and I believe we will blast that out as well at the end of this. And this is going to take you to the homepage. So what you will find here is a topics menu up here with all kinds of different resources. Down here is the Ohio Community Resources Platform. We are hoping to expand this and make this an iterative process over time. An intro to therapy. These are just kind of hot topics that are actually based on the algorithm that is local to Franklin County. So what is trending in our area? And these will update as more and more people start to employ the platform and all of its uses. But I'm going to take you through just a couple of really valuable resources for everybody. First of all, the topics. You can search by topic. If you already are kind of in tune with what you're struggling with or what a loved one or a friend is struggling with, you can just go right to it. If it's addiction and recovery, if it's an eating disorder, or, I know that I want online therapy right off the bat. You can go on, you can personalize what's right for you. There are all kinds of FAQs. There are blogs and resources. There are podcasts, even YouTube videos down here that are going to give you all kinds of different resources. This is really meant to just meet people where they are, really be human and family centric. Then there are different topics other than mental health. So life changes, emotional, healthy relationships, LGBTQ parenting, compassion fatigue, all kinds of different things that are universal throughout sort of life in the United States right now. I'm going to come back to assessments. There are blog posts here that you can access. There's news. This is also algorithmically produced based on what is going on and what are the top searches for the platform in Franklin County. And then there are the community resources, which are expanding all the time as we develop this platform and create new community partners. There are sort of immediate needs here, obviously 911, but then also some really great local resources, local and national resources that people can access in real time. So the real sort of meat of this and what makes this unique for our community, rather than just sort of a mental health platform, are these assessments. And so if you go here, you can take some that are a little bit more targeted. You can take some like mental health check-in, which will just take you a couple of minutes, job or family, or things that are a little bit more targeted for your day-to-day or your overall experience. But the big sort of bread and butter, all-encompassing, is this 12-minute assessment right here. And this is, what's your mental health profile? And if you click on this, it's going to take you to a 5-page survey. It's going to guide you through a list of academically vetted and curated questions that is going to pertain to your everyday life and the challenges that you face with interpersonal communications, interactions with substance or drugs or alcohol, family issues, and then caregiver issues as well. And so I have already gone through and just randomized a response to this five-page questionnaire. And as you can see, everything is going to be cited here. So if you are sort of the academic type, you can go and copy and paste this into Google and actually read up on why they're asking you a specific sort of question. But you're going to go through this. You're going to hit next a couple of times here. It's going to bring you to the final assessment, which is going to give you what's called your current mental health profile. This is completely anonymous. You don't have to sign anything. You don't have to give an email address. It's just going to give you a basic understanding and assessment of kind of where you are in your mental health journey. It's going to give you areas where you're doing well, some areas of concern, areas of greater concern. This might be something that you want to look into sort of in the near short term. And then it's going to give you all kinds of local and national resources. So it's really, really a powerful kind of tool. You can bookmark this. You can come back to it at your own speed, at your own pace, and at your, all of these resources are free at your disposal, thanks to the Board of Commissioners here in Franklin County. That is kind of the very high level view of this platform. If you have any questions, you can always shoot Bart or I a message, or reach into the resources that we have available. I'm happy to answer any further questions that you have. But I will turn it back over to Bart, and we will sort of get the session started. Back to you, Bart.
Thanks so much, Andrew, and thank you for again highlighting that. Again, this the Credible Minds platform, this isn't something that is a substitute, a replacement for clinical mental health treatment, therapy, or anything like that. This is about being that bridge, right, for people to find out more at that self-paced, and then get connected with the right resources for them, because we recognize how this time, but especially just life in general here in the midst of this pandemic, it's so necessary. So thank you, Andrew, for again highlighting that, and really excited to get into the conversation now with our panelists to talk a little bit about this. And I'm gonna throw a change up right away and kind of just go a little bit out of order. Shame on me, but I want to start actually with Melissa, because I think this will help set the table a little bit. So Melissa, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about yourself and the work with OJPP, and then specifically what the sort of associations are between mental health disorders, violent crime, and impacts on trauma and family members, because we know there's a lot of information and misinformation, I think, about the impact of mental health and violent and associations of violent crime. So I'd like to address some of that off the bat.
Well, hi, Bart, and thank you again to Job and Family Services and the entire team for highlighting some of what we're doing out of our office. We think some of the work we're doing is pretty innovative, and we just appreciate the opportunity to share it with the community and everyone who might be watching today or later. So again, I am Melissa Pierson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Franklin County Office of Justice Policy and Programs. I have actually been with Franklin County since 1996, and yes, that does tell you I'm old. I'm old. I actually started with the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas in 1996 and then migrated over to what was then called the Justice Programs Unit in 2000. We've since become a couple different iterations, but today we are the Justice Policy and Programs. What's that mean for someone who maybe has no idea what we do? Well, essentially, we are a criminal justice planning agency by ORC. Because Franklin County is of the size that it is, it has more than 500,000 residents. The Franklin County Board of Commissioners back in 1999, along with the mayor at that time, decided we were a community that needed to have its own criminal justice planning board. And I say its own because a lot of times when you don't have these kind of criminal justice coordinating councils, what happens is the state largely determines a lot of your funding priorities and maybe where some of your priorities lie in general in terms of resources. So we're very fortunate here in Franklin County, Cuyahoga County and Hamilton County both have something similar, as you can expect. But what that means for the community is that you have a dedicated planning group that convenes all of the stakeholders along the criminal justice spectrum. And I'm talking from prevention at Intercept Zero, all the way through reentry of somebody coming home from a carceral setting, like from the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. So that entire continuum of elected officials, community leaders, they all come together and we convene these meetings quarterly or as needed. And what we're really trying to approach are system level challenges. So we're not trying to go into any one office, like say the public defender's office or the prosecutor's office and say, this is how you should be doing business. What we're trying to do is convene the conversation where we know there's overlap in challenges between system partners. So that's really kind of our role, is to facilitate those really important community conversations that don't necessarily always just happen on a day-to-day basis because we are so very busy. Everyone along the justice continuum has learned to do more with less since the recession, and that does play a factor in the topics that we're talking about today. But we're that agency that's meant to convene conversations and facilitate the partnerships. We also provide training and technical assistance as needed across the continuum. And another arm of our office that we're not going to talk too much about today is that we do administer a lot of the federal formula grant funds that come down to Franklin County for violence against women, Title II juvenile justice and delinquency prevention, targeted community alternatives to prison. So those are just a few of the grants. And then we also apply for discretionary grants at the federal level. I'm going to let Courtney kind of talk about those. I don't want to steal her thunder. You asked me a really great question, Bart, and I want to get right into that. And that is the interlap or the overlap between mental health, violent crime, and the impact of trauma on our victims and our family members. So I'm going to start by saying something we've been hearing, and it's almost cliche now. Our jails are our biggest mental health hospitals. It's not in question, it is a fact. I can tell you today, sitting in our jail is probably 40% of the population. And just to give you some perspective, on any given day in our jail, over the last 4 to 6 months, we have approximately 1,500 to 1,600 individuals, either they're pre-sentence or as a sentenced individual in our jails. We have 2 jails that operate. On any given day, 40% of those individuals are going to have a diagnosis of a mental health disorder. On any given day, upwards of 25% of those individuals of the entire population actually is diagnosed with a severe and persistent mental health disorder. And when we think of severe and persistent, we're looking at challenges that really really interrupt an individual's ability to function on a day-to-day basis, okay? Things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, conditions that people can lead very, very normal lives, right? We know that, and we want to make sure people understand that, but it also can be very disruptive to their lives if they're not following medication regimes or receiving that support that they need. I really want to make this emphasis part because I think this is really important. I think there's been a lot of stigma and misinformation put out there that who's responsible for the violent crime? Oh, it's those people with mental illness. Couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is, yes, some people with mental illness commit violent crime, but some people without mental illness commit violent crime. Those are not the predictors for whether someone will go on to commit violent crime or not. In fact, an individual with severe and persistent mental illness is more likely to become a victim of violent crime than to be a perpetrator of violent crime. So I think that's a really, really important point to make. I could really go on and on about this subject, but that's something that was really important that I wanted everyone to realize is that we cannot stigmatize individuals, continue to stigmatize them. Why? Because what it does is it creates a barrier for people to seek out treatment, right? And we want the individuals we work with, we want to increase their linkage and access to treatment so that we can hopefully mitigate some of those circumstances that have gotten them involved with the criminal justice system to begin with. And again, that's not mental illness. That's a lot of other contextual community factors, social determinants of health, community conditions that really play a much larger role in why people are involved in the criminal justice system. And hopefully if we have time, we'll get into some of those, but I think I'll stop for now and allow some others to contribute.
No, thank you, Melissa. Thank you for making that point, because I think it cannot be had enough. That again, people dealing with mental health and addiction issues, this is nothing about being inherently violent. They are more likely to be victims of violent crime. But I think it is still an important conversation that we do need to have. And you hinted on them a little bit earlier, Melissa, about some of the grant programs administered by OJPP. I want to bring Courtney Benner. She is the grant specialist for your office in on the conversation a little bit. And Courtney, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit or provide an overview about some of those grant programs and maybe zoom in a little bit on some of the direct services or other justice planning and grants administration that your work encounters.
Definitely. And thank you for having us today. We are so appreciative of the opportunity to be able to talk on this. So I am Courtney Benner. I serve as our grant specialist for the office. And Melissa gave a brief overview into our agency and what we do. And one of the points she discussed was that we are responsible for the oversight and administration of justice grants for our county. So we serve as both a direct recipient for grant dollars to provide program and services for residents in-house, as well as a pass-through entity for state funds that we receive. Then we distribute to various local organizations and programs who work with each grant-specific target resident population. So for some of the direct service grants that we receive in-house, we receive 2 grants from the Substance Abuse Mental Health and Service Administration, or SAMHSA, and the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And this is really to provide a comprehensive opioid and substance abuse programming for justice-involved residents in Franklin County. And we have 2 key programs offered under these grants. That is the Pathways Achieving Recovery by Choice program, or Pathways, which I'll refer to it as, and the Rapid Resource Center. So the Pathways program, this is a program that we run in collaboration with Alvis. So our office is responsible for serving the female population, and Alvis serves the male population. And this program is designed to provide services for justice-involved residents that have been identified into booking into our county jails as exhibiting high risk for substance use disorders and overdose. So the programs start pre-release. It includes screening and assessment. They'll undergo 8 weeks of cognitive behavioral treatment group. They'll be linked with our MAT services in the jail, receive transition and discharge planning, and overall comprehensive case management with our case management team and peer support services. The program then will transition to post-release. It includes ongoing case management and peer support, weekly recovery management groups on the weekends. We can assist with transportation, linkage to recovery and reentry services, treatment and sober living, and a variety of pro-social groups and activities. So this is a program that's available to residents. Primarily, it starts pre-release. So if anybody listening in is yourself or a loved one is interested in receiving services, we always suggest submitting a call card or even just giving our office a call, which we'll make sure that we drop our number here in the comments as well. And the great thing about this is if for some reason the individual is not eligible to receive services through the Pathways program, we do also have a Rapid Resource Center in-reach team, which is the second initiative I wanted to touch on. So the Rapid Resource Center, that's funded by our other program, the SAMHSA and BJA grants as well. So this is a one-stop shop center that's located in the North Visitation Lobby of our Franklin County Correctional Center 2. This is the jail off of Jackson Pike Road. And the purpose of this Rapid Resource Center is really to increase access for residents to reentry and discharge planning, link them with treatment and mental health services, receive harm reduction education, and provide just a wraparound support services that will help support their positive reintegration back into the community. So staff in the Rapid Resource Center are well-versed in all of the community resources. And we even have our partner Primary One Health out there multiple days throughout the week who can provide on-site linkages to behavioral health and mental services. So as for accessing that resource, you can just drop right on in when somebody is released. And we are very fortunate to be able to provide services to both residents and their family and loved ones. So this is kind of a one-stop place where we can help individuals that are being released from the jail, but also their loved ones who may just be visiting. And if it's not somebody who's coming right out of the jail, we can also link them with our reentry coordinator, Johnny Turner, who's in our office. He serves as our community point of contact for individuals who are getting released. So we can link them both with the Rapid Resource Center and Johnny Turner, and we'll make sure that we drop all of those resources as well in the comments, so everybody has access to those as well.
Thank you. And I think it's just so important. We know how many challenges our justice involved residents, and remember, they can be coming out of the jail system without any charges or anything like that. And we know it creates so many barriers from jobs, housing, you name it, let alone getting and maintaining if they need mental health treatment. So I think it's so important and vital and great that you are having have that Rapid Resource Center right there to just meet people where they are, as we've kind of inferred earlier. I am curious though a little bit, you highlighted obviously the jail-based programming, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about some of the programs that maybe accept community referrals and are open to all residents versus those that are really at that nexus of criminal justice that might need referrals from the courts or probation.
Definitely. Yeah, so the programs I mentioned, those are grants that we receive and we provide the direct services, but we additionally receive grants as pass-through grants that we help then support programs in our community. So Kevin will be speaking in more detail about our Violence Against Women or VAWA grant, but this is a grant that we receive that's designed to support communities in their efforts to develop and strengthen law enforcement and prosecution strategies to combat violence against women and strengthen some of those victim services in the community. So you might hear him talk about Choices, the domestic violence shelter, so programs like that in the community that we can link individuals and residents to those services. We also receive funding from the Ohio Department of Youth Services for our Title II delinquency prevention program. And these are for positive youth development programming for residents. So we're talking about the Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We support Capital University, who does tutoring in our detention center. So these are all services and programs that we help fund and support, and residents can reach out to our office directly and we can link them with those services. But you can also feel free to reach out to those organizations as well themselves. And then we'll make sure our website is up to date with all of that information, all the partners' most contact information, so residents can access those resources. One program I did want to spotlight was within our targeted community alternatives to prison program is our Fuse initiative. So this is a program out of the Corporation for Supportive Housing, and it is their signature program that is designed to serve as a returning home initiative for individuals with complex mental health and behavioral health challenges who are the highest users of our county jails, the shelters, our crisis centers. So this program will provide long-term housing, and it's a housing first model that's then coupled with wraparound services for residents. So individuals who may be eligible are residents who have an increase in justice involvement history-wise. So for female and males, we're looking at in past 3 years, have they met the criteria of a certain number of arrests and a certain number of jail bed days in our systems? And that's something definitely that we can help out with on our end in determining that eligibility, but that is open for community referrals. A few other resources that I just wanted to point out there that residents may be able to take advantage of. We partner with mental health, Southeast Mental Health, and they can provide behavioral health, primary care services to residents. So we'll make sure we include that number in the comments here as well. We work with Base Camp Recovery, who opens their doors for comprehensive outpatient addiction and mental health services for our residents. Alvis also provides reentry services. They're the ones who provide our Mayo Pathways program, but they also have a recovery choices agency in there where they can provide behavioral health services to residents as well. And then, like I mentioned, we have Primary Health, who partners with our Rapid Resource Center, but they also can provide women health services, primary care, pediatrics, and a wraparound behavioral and mental health services. So we will make sure we drop all of those numbers and addresses there in the comments. It might be kind of lengthy, so I will put a little shameless plug for our reentry website as well. So we do serve as kind of the reentry hub for Franklin County. So a lot of these partners and programs are all listed on our website as well. And like I mentioned, either the Rapid Resource Center if you're getting immediately released, or Johnny Turner, our reentry coordinator in the community, is available to help link you with some of those services.
Thanks, and we will absolutely get that out. Remember, if you've got any questions while you're watching here for any of our panelists, please feel free to let us know in the chat. We will try to tackle those as they come in. I want to get to Kevin, but first I'm going to go back to Melissa to kind of tee it off. And I want Melissa, if you could, talk with us a little bit. Courtney inferred it or alluded to it a little bit earlier, but talk a little bit about the overlap between justice-involved individuals, especially women or people who identify as women, and the prevalence of domestic violence or intimate partner violence. Maybe it's helpful as well to start with just some kind of shared language and definitions for, what do we mean by justice-involved individuals, maybe starting there.
Sure. And we might take that for granted that we all speak the speak, right? It's our own personal alphabet soup. So how we consider someone with justice involvement is anyone who's ever maybe touched the criminal justice system. And that could be, even a traffic ticket. And I say that because we are so focused now on getting folks out of the criminal justice system. So we used to use terms that were really disparaging. Things like offender, things like inmate. Those are terms we're trying to move away from, right? We want people to, if you do touch the criminal justice system anywhere along the continuum, our goal is to get you into an off-ramp out of the criminal justice system. So we found that using the terminology justice involved individual, there's a lot of folks who prefer the term restored citizen. What we want folks to know is, look, for most of us, we could have been there. We could be you. We could be someone sitting behind bars but for one mistake we may have made in our lives, right? So we want to make sure that we're using terminology that is respectful and shows, gives people the dignity that they deserve. So justice involved just means someone who maybe in their past or maybe even their present right now is involved in some way, some shape or form in the criminal justice system. Is that, and in terms of the lingo, what else did you want me to touch on there, Bart?
I think that's helpful. And it's a helpful, again, doing that. And then maybe just, speaking a little bit about that overlap between these justice-involved residents, especially our females, and the prevalence of domestic violence or intimate partner violence. And I know Kevin can probably go into that a little bit more in depth as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Kevin talk mostly about that, but I will highlight something that you've kind of brought up, and that's the impact of the pandemic. With the pandemic, we know that people were feeling more isolated. There was less access to treatment and resources and supports. And so as a result, we know domestic violence and intimate partner violence, and maybe that's another definition we do need to talk about. What is intimate partner violence? That could be anything along the lines of physical abuse, sexual abuse. It can be economic abuse. It can be anything that creates an unsafe environment for someone that might be engaged in an intimate partner relationship. Okay, so it's a little different from domestic violence. And a lot of people don't know those nuances. But what we did find is, as a result of the pandemic, that almost that we know that the rates of reporting and the rates of victims coming forward and maybe applying for protection orders, it went down significantly during the pandemic. That isolation, sometimes the courts weren't even open to be able to go get a protection order. So the pandemic did us no favors in this aspect. We know that a lot of individuals were forced into some pretty dangerous situations, and it meant being in homes for longer, more hours of the day, because there was nowhere else really to go during the heart of the pandemic. And that created some pretty dangerous situations for our survivors and of course their family members. And I think Kevin can go into what we're doing with the various follow-up programs. And I'm hoping he's also going to touch on one of our real bigger initiatives, which is called the Blueprint to Safety initiative. And when you think of Blueprint to Safety, it's more of a framework, and it's more of a collective grouping of all our procedures and responses so that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction as we serve the victims and the survivors of domestic violence and intimate partner violence.
Yes, love to bring you in now, Kevin Greenwood. He is the Deputy Director for Survivor Services and oversees CASA Franklin County. To just talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Thank you, Bart. Again, I am Kevin Greenwood. I'm Deputy Director of Survivor Services and team leader for CASA. I have spent most of my life in the nonprofit sector up until about 2 years ago when we transitioned, we being CASA Franklin County, to a department under the Office of Justice Policy and Programs. And I'm grateful for that opportunity and grateful for the opportunity to share with you today. Melissa talked about earlier bringing agencies together with a common goal. And really, that's the heart of the Blueprint for Safety. Back in 2020, our office received a $900,000 grant with a very long name, Improving Criminal Justice Responses to Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking. And that grant came to us from the U.S. Department of Justice and the Office for Violence Against Women for the purpose of instituting a Blueprint for Safety here in our community. Blueprint for Safety originated back in 2007 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and is now in various communities across our nation. What makes it so distinct and so important is that it's just not working to compile policies and programs. So, it would be easy to put together a manual that says, this is what the police department does, this is what the prosecutor does, this is what the courts do, and this is what social services do. But instead, what the Blueprint for Safety is all about is bringing those various components and agencies together and saying, now, here's what we all do. How can we come up with one process and one protocol that we can all contribute to that will make the lives of our survivors easier? And it's been amazing over the past few months. We're coming up on the end of the first year in phase one, but to watch these various organizations like the Columbus City Attorney's Office, the Franklin County Municipal Court, their pretrial and probation units, the Columbus Division of Police, the Franklin County Sheriff, Franklin County Prosecutor, our office, and then the Research Institute at Nationwide Children's Hospital, all coming together and sharing what it is we do, how we serve survivors, and then taking that information and hopefully in the very near future, coming up with the protocol that we can all own, we can all buy into and support one another in working and helping our survivors in the county. There are really a couple of main goals to the whole process, and one of them is to improve how we share as agencies information. Are there ways to have common databases where we can all access information readily without asking a survivor to tell the story over and over and over again? Can we ensure that risk to the survivor is minimized at every stage of the process? So if we know, for example, that an individual who has allegedly taken part or perpetrated domestic violence on another individual, if they're being released, we need to let that survivor know. So how do we build in processes that will make that just automatic second nature to what we're doing? We want to encourage new victim engagement strategies, especially in terms of advocacy and representation. Unfortunately, no one's encounter with domestic violence is general or common. They're all unique to that individual. And so we need to tailor our response to the uniqueness of every individual and provide for them what it is that they need in this continuum as they're dealing from the abuse to wholeness again. We want to pay attention to preventing unintentional negative impacts on our survivors. So I mentioned a moment ago that we might ask a survivor to tell their story again and again and again. But every time we ask them to tell that story, they're re-traumatized. Every time we ask them to go through that horrible moment in their life, they have to relive it in their mind. So if we can reduce those times when they have to recount that situation, all the better. We were just trying to get information, but not realizing the impact it would have on those survivors. And then finally, it's just to create a new way for our agencies to work together, a new way for our agencies to take a look at what it is we do from a much higher level. Unfortunately, as with many aspects in our world, in business and government, people and organizations get siloed. And so we do it this way and they do it that way. We want to really make a concerted effort to do it in one way that simplifies and that streamlines and that makes this whole process easier for those who have suffered from domestic violence or intimate partner violence, whatever it may be. So that's really the heart of Blueprint for Safety. And as I said, this first phase has been amazing, just watching these various agencies come together and learn from one another. To sit down, our office to sit down with the prosecutors and the prosecutors to sit down with the courts and to understand how the interplay goes. And hopefully that open dialogue and communication is going to lead to a much better system for our survivors.
Thank you so much for that. And we are talking with Kevin Greenwood. He's the Deputy Director of Survivor Services for the Office of Justice Policy and Programs. We've also got Courtney Benner, Grants Specialist, and Melissa Pierson, the COO, for our Lunch and Learn conversation right now about mental health, violence, and the impact of trauma on families, survivors, and victims. Kevin, you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I'm curious, maybe beyond what you're looking at through this Blueprint for Safety initiative, what other opportunities, if any, have you identified for strengthening our systemic response to domestic violence and intimate partner violence? Or maybe, I don't know if there are any national models or best practices that you've been observing through this work. And if Melissa or Courtney have seen anything else as well that you'd like to share, please, by all means.
Well, I welcome their comments on this. I have to say, as someone who is relatively new to this office, the Office of Justice Policy and Programs in and of itself has been a trendsetter in from what I've been able to discern and to see in other models across the country. The way we work with the community, I think, is one of our strongest points. Melissa has shared that, Courtney has shared that. I'm fortunate enough to work with the VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act grant. And that grant, it was back on April 2nd, I believe, of this year, that the commissioners accepted that grant from the Office of Criminal Justice Services for our county. And it was in the amount of $680,000. And $680,000, unfortunately, is not enough money. to address the situations we're looking at. But I think what we do with that money here in Columbus and in Franklin County is making quite an impact. Courtney mentioned a few moments ago, part of those funds would go, for example, to Lutheran Social Services Choices for Victims of Domestic Violence, an organization that has done amazing things. They use the funding for legal advocates for those who have suffered domestic violence, but they provide so many services. They provide physical shelter for those who have been abused. They provide kennels. You know, we don't often think about this. We see it sometimes in natural disasters, but people are hesitant to leave a situation and leave their animals behind. And that's true for domestic violence victims. They're a great source of comfort. They're a great source of consolation and hope. So Choices now has a shelter where if you're a domestic violence survivor, you can bring your pet with you. It's things like that you know, we see developing within those organizations that we support that are so, you know, so important. You take a look at an Advocating for Opportunity here in Franklin County. They do amazing work with human trafficking survivors. And unfortunately, Ohio is one of the areas where human trafficking is at its highest. We have a network of interstate highways that all crisscross in Ohio. And so unfortunately, young men and young women are being trafficked, not just for sex, but for labor. And so Advocating Opportunities is providing them with legal services and counseling and advice so that they're not having to continue being forced into that lifestyle. They are victims. Ethiopian Tehuado Social Services is another group that we fund. And their work with the immigrant and refugee community is outstanding. You know, Melissa alluded to this a little earlier about the whole situation with economic dependency as a form of abuse. And so often we see when folks enter this country as immigrants or refugees, for whatever reason, others in their family may take from a woman her visa, her identification. And what we find then is this individual cannot get a job, cannot drive. They become isolated from the community. And unfortunately, there are times when physical abuse and sexual abuse accompany those situations. And so ETSS is there to help those individuals. Ohio's Hispanic Coalition does something very similar for the Latino and Latina community here in Franklin County. Ohio Health Research Institute is the organization that sponsors SARNCO, the Sexual Abuse Resource Network of Ohio. They provide a hotline, not just for Central Ohio, but statewide, to help those who are surviving and dealing with sexual assault. They provide trainings in the community to professionals, to businesses, to community organizations. They solicit volunteers to staff that hotline and train them and do an amazing job at outreach and work with the community. Mount Carmel CTAP program provides counseling for those who are involved in domestic violence and intimate partner violence. And then you have the law enforcement and courts providing advocates. You know, this is not a domestic violence situation, but as an example, over the past few weeks, we have all heard about and read about the Dr. Husel trial. It's those advocates in the prosecutor's office who are working with those families who have lost loved ones to help them through what has been a really public and very, you know, difficult time. So those are the kinds of things that I think we're really kind of, again, setting the trend for supporting these agencies and these organizations in doing the good work on the ground here in Central Ohio. And I have to tell you, if you don't think that makes an impact, in 2021, in the midst of the pandemic, when there were all kinds of physical distancing restrictions and everything else, the organizations I just shared with you provided direct services for 5,516 Franklin County residents. Those same organizations provided quality training for 1,300 individuals. And the prosecuting departments that specialize in domestic violence were able to support 3,246 prosecutions. But the need, as I started with, is much greater than the resources. We were able to get, and the Board of Commissioners accepted that $678,000 grant, but the requests that came into our office were 1.1 million. So there's just a lot that can still be done out there, and we're hoping to work together with our community in getting that done.
I appreciate, and I really appreciate as well that training aspect, right? I think anywhere where we're helping, equip more people within the community with that kind of trauma-informed understanding or emotional intelligence, just to be able to handle or be able to recognize some of those more subtle signs. If someone that they know or love maybe a victim of domestic or intimate partner violence, I think that's just so vital. In Melissa and Courtney, I want if there anything else from around the area, strengthening that response that we can from the system, or anything else just that you would like to highlight and make sure the viewers are able to take away from this conversation, please, by all means, share.
Well, I'll go ahead, and something that Kevin made me think about, when you think of individuals involved in the criminal justice system, and I'm thinking from victims to the perpetrators, to individuals that have been charged with crimes. I want you to think like this, though. Think most victims will not go on to become perpetrators, but what I can tell you is most perpetrators were victimized. Yep. And so I'm hoping this kind of changes that lens that we view people who are involved in the criminal justice system from. One thing that's been really exciting, Bart, from our vantage point in the criminal justice system, we've really learned. The pandemic taught us, and the last 10 years have taught us, what we've been doing does not work. Crime rates gone up, they've gone down, they've gone up, they've gone down, not because of some of the interventions we've necessarily implemented from a criminal justice lens. We are not going to punish people out of committing crime. Why? Because people don't commit crime for those reasons. They commit crime because of underlying factors. And what I mean by that is, if we can start looking at criminal justice from a public health lens, an area of the profession that we know works, and look at how can we create an environment that is conducive for an individual and their families to thrive. We have a saying here in our office that reentry planning does not happen towards the end of someone's stay in a carceral setting. It needs to happen the day someone maybe gets involved and engaged with the criminal justice system. For our office, a lot of times that means that jail stay, right? We need, from the first day that an individual is booked into the jail, we need to be doing assessments. We need to be doing screening. We need to be doing transition planning from that day forward with that individual, and they need to be part of that transition plan as well. We know that the social determinants of health of individuals plays a significant role in whether someone will continue to engage in criminal justice behavior and criminal crime. And if we can just address some of those social determinants, we can get people out of the criminal justice system. We feel very confident the research, the contemporary research, all lends to that point, and that we all need to start moving in that direction, because what we've been doing, incarcerating people, does not work. It makes people unhealthier. It makes people, it yields destabilized families, economic instability. It just doesn't work. It's expensive to the taxpayers. And so we really need to think about how we address crime in a new way. And I'll get off my platform right now, but it is exciting to see how we are moving from a punitive criminal justice framework to really taking notes from the public health framework.
Oh, and I appreciate that so much, and we appreciate having leaders like Deputy Administrator Bivens, but all the way up to as well our commissioners who have shared that vision, and as we're moving forward and trying to reimagine and build a more equitable county as we knock on wood begin to emerge from this pandemic. I think it's such a vital lens to view this, that public health lens, and how that impacts everything is just so important. Courtney, I want to give you a chance to get kind of a last word in.
Honestly, I feel like Kevin and Melissa really hit it home there. We were talking about, I think the things you'll see coming forward with our Blueprint initiative. I think that's a really great opportunity. That is really the opportunity for our county to address this. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for that. We love to talk about this. As you can tell, we're very passionate about these things, and our office touches so many different lives, right? The intersection of criminal justice, we impact with survivors of victim services, so youth, families, so and now with all of our HHS organizations coming together, I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to serve. So we are very fortunate that you had us here today, and I'll take it back to you.
All right. But before we close, I do want to just go back to Kevin very quickly. And Kevin, I'd like you to put on your CASA hat, your other hat, just quickly to give us a little high-level elevator pitch about the work of court-appointed special advocates and how people can learn more and get involved and volunteer if they'd like.
Thank you, Bart. I love having my CASA hat on, and it is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, so I appreciate this plug. Although we're not a direct facing organization, all of the children we serve come to us as assignments from the court. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and we've been around for 30 years. We're now a department of OJPP, and we train community volunteers to be advocates on behalf of abused and neglected children in the Franklin County domestic and juvenile court system. This past year, we served, well, let's go back to pre-pandemic. In 2019, we served over 882 children in Franklin County. We currently have just above 300 active volunteers who we recruit, we train, and we support throughout the course of their work with our community. The biggest thing that you don't have to be an attorney, you don't have to have legal experience. The biggest thing is that you are there for the child. We see over and over and over again that resiliency comes from a consistent adult presence in the life of an abused and neglected child. And that's a big role of what we do. And if folks would like to learn more, you can go to casa.franklincountyohio.gov. We have 2 more trainings coming up this year, and we'd love to have you on our team. So thank you for allowing me to do that plug, Bart. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. I think it just gets to that point, Melissa, that you made a little bit earlier too about, victims and perpetrators of violence, that being a victim does not mean you're going to, but when you look at those perpetrators, they often hurt people. And that's why the work of CASA is so important. That's why the work that all of you and your entire agency do. We're so fortunate and grateful to have you all joining with us today for today's Lunch and Learn. This has been an educational and it's an enriching conversation. I hope that all of you watching today learned a lot, especially information that you didn't previously know about mental health, well-being, and that intersection, as well as the resources that are available here in Franklin County, including those from our friends here at the Justice Policy and Programs that they've highlighted. So again, this was the third and final session of this 3-point lunch and learn series focused around mental health and featuring the Office of Justice Policy and Programs as well as local providers. I want to thank you again to our panelists, Courtney, to Melissa, and to Kevin for joining and engaging with all of us this afternoon. Thank you to everyone who took time out of your day this afternoon to join us, or if you're watching after the fact, thank you for sticking with us through all this, and really, again, want to encourage you to take advantage. So if you want to get more information or access resources that you or a loved one might need for mental health or topics that we've covered over this past 3 months, you can visit the Franklin County Office of Justice Policy and Programs website. That's www.jpp.franklincountyohio.gov. And you can visit our new mental health online library. That is at franklincountyohio.crediblemindcom. So again, thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next month. And when we start our weekly series that's going to highlight our summer youth employment programming. So all May, we're going to be highlighting summer youth employment opportunities for young people to get valuable work experience and earn some money while they're learning. So I hope you will join us for that. Again, thank you to all our panelists to join us today. Thank you all for tuning in. You have a great day.
Thanks, Bart.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.